Welcome back to the Jesus Loving Logger. I know it's been a while. I got some time off work, so I made up some more videos, and I'm going to start again. I actually made a few videos, and then I was praying on them, and I felt like I was supposed to go back and do more apologetics, trying to prove the Bible more. So what I did before was called evidential apologetics. It's like showing the evidence that everything the Bible has said is real, that the artifacts that are shown are proven by the Bible, that the people who existed in the Bible really existed, that kind of thing. Everything I did to show it before. And now we're going to move on to some different type of apologetics, more in the realm of classical apologetics, I guess is what it's called. But there's quite a few different kinds, so I'll explain each of them when we go. Today, I think I'm going to start with presuppositional apologetics. And I'm not going to go too deep into them. If you guys want more depth in them, go watch a guy by the name William Lane Craig. And he'll do like 28, 38 hours on each one of these subjects. And he'll get way more involved. I'll just kind of give you an overview and the type of thinking that they involve. But I can't go too deep into them because it would take a long time. And I'm going to save you and I both the quantum physics arguments and all that kind of stuff, and just try to keep it in terms that I can explain or understand the best. On with presuppositional apologetics. Okay, presuppositional apologetics. It means to show obvious logical reasons that everybody would hold to. Ideas that we already believe or presuppose. So there's certain things that we all kind of already believe in our mind. And without the Christian worldview, which is like morals of the Christian and things like that, these presuppositional ideas couldn't be, you couldn't have them, or else you'd have to lean on Christian beliefs to accept them, if that makes sense. I hope I'm explaining that good enough, because I'm trying to make it simple. These things, when you look into them, these guys that have their PhDs that explain it really go in depth, so I'm trying to simple it all out. But you might notice my new hat. My little sister got that for me. Thank you, Lacey. And anyway, that's the machine I run there, and that's who I am. So back to presuppositional apologetics. A person's reasoning is molded by things that they assume and things that they presuppose to be true. Reason can't exist without us having a foundation of these assumptions that we presuppose. Basically, we base reason on things that we already believe. We realize that a non-Christian may try to corrupt their reasoning, and the enemy will most definitely try to corrupt and set against the clear understanding of reason. So things that we just assume to be true, he's gonna go in and work on their mind to try to make them think that those things aren't true. And you can see that in the world all over today, with the whole issue with people that are boys thinking maybe they're not boys and all that. That definitely the enemy working on them, not them presupposing that there's just two options there. You're a boy or you're a girl. Like, pretty simple, right? To us who have a foundation like that. Our proof for the truth as a Christian must be based on the foundation of the Word and the Bible itself. The authority in it, that's our truth. Throughout this approach, we can show that without a Christian God, there is no consistent meaning in logic. Logic should always be streamlined just one way, but without God, people can try to switch that around. So when non-Christians use these things, they're stealing Christian foundations if they try to use our logic, because the logic we get from the Bible. So if they agree with that logic, they're agreeing with a part of the Bible. But then some of them want to say, well, it's just because of the way humans are. Well, no, it's not because of the way humans are. It's because of a certain design feature. So, and a moral standard. Christianity is a worldview with a foundation under it that gives rise to a need for honesty, reason, logic, integrity, and order. The atheist worldview claims that we are just all products of random matter and an accident. They say nothing matters. Christians seek to prove that apart from God, you can't know anything, prove anything, that you must start with God. Okay, so when they try to reason right and wrong, where do they get that right and wrong from? You have to start, there has to be a reason, something you're measuring from. So we measure, God says this is right and this is wrong, and where are we? Somewhere in the middle. Nobody's perfect. But the atheists try to say there is no right and wrong, you should just be here because that's what humanity is like. Just we're here, not based off of anything, just because that's how things are. But we try to show that that's not just how things are. Other apologetic methods try to prove that the Christian worldview with a foundation that leads up to the reality of God being real. So the unique thing about presuppositional apologetics is it starts with the idea. When you're trying to argue your case, you start with the idea that God is real, and then you work downward from there. All the other apologetic methods prove the Christian worldview by building a foundation that leads up to the reality of God. So you're starting small, and your ultimate proof is God. And here we're saying, well, if God, then, and then you go downhill from there. And so it's a backwards proof, kind of. So a couple ideas from the Bible that support this are Proverbs 1:7. The beginning of knowledge is the fear of the Lord. And Proverbs 9:10. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. And knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So knowledge of the Lord through his word is the only way that you can get wisdom. That last part was me interpreting it. And anyway, this kind of explains the idea, the thought that the beginning, to have wisdom, you have to fear the Lord and then seek for the wisdom. And if you fear the Lord first, then he'll show himself to you. It's a respect issue, not so much what you should be. You should fear God, but it's more of a, you fear not doing life his way, and you respect him. So all men created in the image of God, therefore, can't help but eventually use ideas from the Bible in their arguments. See, we're all created in the image of God, and he designed our minds all in the same way. So eventually, even unknowingly, we're gonna go seek ideas of God. And who was it said? Maybe A.W. Tozer said that the most important thing about you is what you think of God, because every human being throughout history, whatever their God, they strive to go in that direction. So if you have a good God, you're going to strive to be better, which there's only one God, but you know what I mean, that false gods that people, like Allah, for example, when people believe in him, they start believing the ideals of him, which he's a God that has no real order. He's kind of chaotic, and he kills, and it's not a good thing. So that's the way that they start striving to be. Without the mind of God, we would not have the ability to use logic and reason. So in reality, when someone tries to reason a logical reality without God in it, when he gave us those things, they are using those things that God gave them to try and argue against him. So I know that sounds like a mouthful, but I think you get the point. So God, we had to be given this logic and reason ability, and the one who gave it to us, that's the only way we can try to argue against him, is to use those things that he gave us, logic and reason, to try to reason that he's not real. People have to presuppose certain things before they decide what they believe. So for example, do you believe that you really exist? I hope so. Do you believe that truth is good and seeking it is good. I hope so. Then you can come to the conclusions about the world based on those presuppositions. What explanation best explains this, that our mind is wired like that, other than that some more powerful higher mind wired us like that? There must have been something to create our minds. Without a reason for us to be able to reason, we couldn't trust our own mind, because it would be just a bunch of random electrical charges in our brain, which is supposedly just a big pile of cells that randomly happen to absorb together, called the brain, for those people who don't believe in any of this. So we couldn't trust a random act of nature, right? With no God-given abilities to make a decision that meant anything. So think about that. If there wasn't something that wired us the way we're wired, why would we all have these similar presuppositions? Why wouldn't people be going a million different directions? I mean, in some sense, people do go a million different directions, but generally speaking, you understand right and wrong, whether you choose to do one or the other is something different. I spoke of logic earlier. This is a big one for the presuppositional argument. Without the foundation and the reason for our logic, which is God, we couldn't have logic. Let's just say that it's ironic when somebody who doesn't believe in God argues what he believes to be logical against the God that gave him the ability to have that logic. I know I already kind of said that in one way, but it's hard to really grasp until I heard it a few times, so I'll probably say it again. So God gives us the mind and the ability to have logic, and he gives us a foundation for reason, and then those things that he gave us, some people will use to try to work against him. Another example, someone tells me that the truth is there is no God. I could say, oh, really? Well, where did you get that idea, that standard for truth? They would say, because I believe that's how humans evolved. This is actually an argument I listened to between somebody. Evolution points to the survival of the fittest. So it would be okay to kill the weak people, right? Oh, no way. No way. That's not okay. Well, there had to be a reason or a creative mind to decide truth. Yeah, maybe there is a reason for truth. If a divine mind made the truth, there is a God with that divine mind. So if God is the standard of truth, you are trying to use his truth to prove he isn't real. So we're trying to say, what's your standard for that belief, that reason for where your foundations are? And they say it's just how humans have kind of evolved up to now. Yet, like he said in that argument, he said, well, you can't really say that, because when you're talking about people evolving, it describes survival of the fittest, which means you don't care about the weak. Like, for you to have a heart and compassion, there must be some reason that you had that, right? Instead of just letting the weak die so that the strong could live. And they just say, well, it's just because that's the way we are. But we understand that's the way we are, but we're trying to tell them there's a reason that's the way we are. Okay, the last example I'll look at is an argument involving the question of evil. Some may argue that God doesn't exist. He isn't powerful enough to stop evil, or he just doesn't even care. They feel that evil's a problem, which proves something negative about God. A presuppositional argument is that evil is no problem. Our presupposed lens tells us that God is all-powerful, he's good, and he's in control. Therefore, if evil is no problem and God is being in control of everything and he's a moral, good God, there is a reason that he lets evil exist. Furthermore, we couldn't have been given free will without being able to choose. if we couldn't choose an evil that exists or choose good, it goes back to that thing I'd talked to before, you would be a robot. Like when I said that the video on good versus evil, we have to be given an opportunity to make a good choice or a bad choice, or it's not our choice. So he would never know our heart unless he fully gives us a choice to do good or bad. And if he's here to stop every person that does good or bad, then we don't really get to make those choices. We might choose different out of fear. So he's given us a opportunity to make those. If we want to turn away from the good and there was no other option, so if we didn't want to be good but there was no option, that wouldn't make sense. There would be no free will. So it's not that he can't control or he can't eradicate evil. It's that he has a purpose for it. This might be hard for a lot of us to grasp, but like I said in that video, why is good or why is evil allowed? If he's a good God, or I don't remember the title of it. It was just 2 videos ago, I think, or maybe my last one. He has a purpose for it, and being in control, we know from the book of Job is a good example. There's a boundary that God keeps it inside of. Nothing can happen without it. So nothing can happen without the boundary. So Satan in the book of Job comes up to God and says he wants to test Job. And God, which a lot of you are going to hear this, and if you don't have a firm grasp of foundation, you're going to think it's kind of cruel. And I used to kind of wonder myself, it was almost like a chess game, God and Satan playing with our lives or something, but that's not really it. Satan came up and asked if he could test Job, and God said, you can't touch Job. You can't touch the person, but you can touch all that he has. That means he couldn't go hurt Job. He couldn't torture him, or he couldn't, do anything. He couldn't kill him, but he could take his worldly things that meant a lot to Job, and his purpose was to try to make Job curse God. And Job wouldn't do it. No matter what happened, he wouldn't curse God. And then God gave Satan a little bit longer leash. And anyway, it was a way to test Job to see how much he really trusted and loved God. And then God, everything that was taken back from him, he was given double what he had before. Except for the children, he was given the same amount of children, which just goes to show you he did have double the children, because in heaven, those first children that ended up dying in the book of Job are going to be in heaven waiting for him. So he does have double the amount of children too. But anyway, so God will allow testing in our life. And some of us, he'll have a hedge of protection around us, and we might not understand why. We might wish that we were the one with a little bit bigger hedge of protection, but God's got his reasons for everything. So when they say there's a problem with evil, we say, no, there's not a problem with evil. God allows evil. He doesn't cause it. He didn't go and make those things happen to Job himself. He just had his hand over Job, and he said it was a hedge of protection. Basically, evil couldn't get in. And then God's like, don't touch Job. They have to ask permission for everything they do. Satan does. And he lifted his hand. He's like, all right, you can touch his stuff, but don't touch him. And Satan knows not to go beyond God's boundaries. He might not like the boundaries, but he's still a created thing, and God would stop him immediately before he did anything. He knows it, so he has to live within rules too. But evil's not a problem. Evil's just a part of things. So anyway, that was the last example of presuppositional apologetics. Like I said, I kind of just gave you a general idea, a general overview of it. If you want to go deeper, there's a lot of people that go much deeper into it. So next time, we're going to talk about cosmological apologetics. So anyway, all these apologetics are pretty exciting to me. I like seeing more proof for God. Thank you for watching this channel, and I hope you come back and watch me again. Jesus, love, and logger. Talk to you later.